We're in the beginning of August, and very few people are thinking about education at this point. People are taking vacations, but September is just around the corner. And some people in the Ministry of Education and in various think tanks, they are starting to prepare for the academic year, and in fact have been working hard all summer doing the admissions campaign and making sure that everything's ready for when everybody's back to school.
And tonight we have with us Inna Sovsun, who is the first Deputy Minister of Education of Ukraine, and Yegor Stadny, who heads a prominent think tank, CDOS, dealing with education and related topics.
Thank you both for joining us. Education is one of those spheres that a lot of people are thinking, what has really changed? The admissions campaign that you just ran successfully, admitting students to university, there's still talk about the process was filled with corruption. Is that really the case? What's changed in this year's intake and the process just as it went?
Well, we have started the reform of university admissions campaign. Ukraine started the reform in 2008 when the independent testing was introduced and former pupils, school graduates, could apply to universities with the results of the independent tests. The problems arise, however, with people applying to universities. They were, when they applied, there is a list of those who have applied, and people applied to many programs. So let's mention you're a very good student. You have applied to 5 universities.
That's normal.
You get a position in 5 universities, right? But you're only dreaming about one single university, let's say Lviv Franco University. So you take the position there. The other suggestions for your positions needs to be filled in by other applicants, right? And that is where the problem started. That is where the process was very untransparent on how those positions were filled if someone refuses to take the position that he or she has been offered. So what we have done for the past 2 years is we have made an automatic system when students who apply to universities, they are the process, the automatic system suggests the seatings for them. So the best available option, you apply, you prioritize your applications, you say, this is my priority number 1. If I'm admitted to this program, I don't care about my application number 2, number 3, number 5, number 10, number 15. And then automatically the system suggests that other seat to another student.
So it opens up the other spots for other students.
Exactly, and the other spots are filled in automatically, not by members of not by the people working in the university, who could do this in various ways.
And this is all computerized, or this is done in?
Yes, that is all computerized.
So it seems like there's not a lot of room for corruption in this system.
Yes.
So would it be fair to say that corruption has really been eliminated in the admissions process?
I would say that to the extent possible, yes, we don't see a single spot for corruption in terms of how you get allocated a spot in the university. That is for sure. But what we have also done this year is we have changed the mechanism of how those budget-funded seats are allocated in between universities.
Can I just stop you there? Not everybody understands what the budget allocated seats. Can you just explain very briefly for someone who doesn't how that system works?
Well, in Ukraine we have this 2-track system where students can either study for free if they get to the seat, if they have good test results, and then the government pays for their education, and they also can get a stipends. Or if your grades are not good enough, or if they're good but you are applying to a really prestigious program, then you can pay a tuition fee, and then you will be a paying student. So the main competition is for those governmental funded seats.
You know, when I talk to my acquaintances from among the university teachers, almost all of them say, we're being underpaid, we don't have enough money to develop our universities. However, there is a recent report which actually says that Ukraine spends too much money on higher education, although it admits that the results are poor. Where's the root of this paradox? And I would like also to hear from Mr. Stadny after the first deputy minister.
Well, I think the problem is this. We do, in fact, spend quite a big portion of the governmental expenditures on education, and we spent a rather big portion of those spending on higher education. But there are several things that need to be taken into account. About 40% of those funding is money going to stipends for the students. So if you take that out of the equation, then the proportion becomes much more adequate, so to speak. Second, for the past 20 years, we have had a decreasing number of school graduates. So every year, the number of school graduates is decreasing.
Is that a demographic thing?
That is demographic thing, purely demographic thing. In 2004, we had more than 500,000 students graduating from schools. This year, we had 200,000. So more than twice the numbers have decreased. And the numbers of the universities has been expanding. So what we have been trying to do is to allocate the same amount of money to a bigger system. So clearly, if you do that, you have less money to spend per university or per single professor.
All right, this is the official point of view. What does this think tank man say?
Well, first of all, we should be grateful for all of those things which are made by the ministry and the team, because they really fight and fought and committed corruption and so on and so on. But we question this experience of 2.5 years in terms of priorities which was chosen, because if we are talking about the policy and the national level, the ministry as policymaker have not so many tools actually. Everybody talks about content, but content is not under control of the ministry.
Content
of study programs in secondary, curriculum in secondary schools and in universities. This is the responsibility of the exact institution and the exact class and the teacher and professor. But what remains in hands of the ministry is funding allocation and the formation of this budget, the whole state budget for the higher education, secondary education, and here we have big problems with stipends, which are useless. That would be appropriate conclusion for if we want to characterize the system, for so-called...
What do you mean, useless?
Useless means without any target, like allocated without any purpose. Just if you have 4, like average mark.
Which is a B.
Yeah, which is B and which is not so like high mark at all. Even in Ukrainian universities, we have examples when people do not attend classes and have 4.
Happens in my university too.
And maybe they are so brilliant students, though. And this is the only one reason why they get stipend.
When you say stipend, this is like their scholarships? So
yeah.
It's their funding?
And we have we have merit-based stipend and need-based. But actually, all of them, in fact, need-based, but not in a proper way allocated.
And let's move that to transparency. You've touched on issues that the way of allocation is, but are the transparent? Is the whole system transparent?
I believe
not just the stipends, but
no. Well, I believe it clearly needs to be more transparent than that. Clearly, the funding is a very sensitive issue, and I actually do fully agree with Igor that more should be done on that. And we have been working a lot on developing a new model for funding of higher education. We have been debating it for the past 2 years or so. But the first step that we have done, and that is something that actually deals with the university admission campaign that we started the debate with, those spots that the government funds for universities, they have been previously allocated by the ministry. So the ministry that did that, well, there is a commission under the ministry that decides which university can get how many students.
Is that a transparent process, though?
It was not, but that has changed this year. And this year, the number of sports that the government would fund is decided not by the ministry. It is actually decided by the students. Where the best students go, that is where the government will fund the sports in the universities.
How does the transparency issue correlate with the attractiveness of the university?
Quality, with quality, first of all.
With
And which universities are recognized the most transparent?
we have made this list of universities who gained most from the system. Yes, we have looked at which universities got more students compared to last year, and
More applicants.
by applicants, and those that the government will fund. And we have compared that to the list of the universities in some rankings that rank their research opportunities, and they're pretty much the same lists. So we can actually say that the students. Well,
we have some disagreement here. Yehudi, would you like to come in on this?
Yeah, I disagree. I would argue that
I'm
there is
not
a strong
saying that that is
correlation.
what
I
the
would say
students
that
look
there
at.
is
But
even no correlation between the level of quality and the motivation and behavior of entrants.
Sorry,
First of all,
the
school
quality of
leavers.
the university
Yes, and
doesn't
and
relate to people applying there?
Yeah, because you don't have enough data to estimate the quality of the university, because we don't have, and this is the key problem here, that the government doesn't pay enough attention to the monitoring systems and to data gathering
I
systems and
thought you
data
would put a
collection.
full stop after the word enough. The government does not pay enough. And this brings me to another question. When actually are you going to raise the salaries of teachers and where the money comes from?
well, I believe those two questions are clearly related. You can't just promise we shall raise the salaries, because what we need to do is to raise salaries that will be performance-based. You need to perform well in order to get higher salary.
How do you evaluate the performance? Who puts the marks to those who put the marks?
Well, there's an evaluation procedure.
Yes, for universities, that is one thing. Well, for specific professors, what we have done for the past year is we have introduced, for instance, we have introduced a new system for getting honorary degrees, honorary status of professors. Those are awarded by the state. Previously, they were awarded without any specific requirements. At the moment, those have been changed. In order to be a professor, you need to have publications in international peer-reviewed journals, which was not the case before. You need to speak English, which was not the case before.
Why not French?
Well, English is the main language of academic communications anyway. There is not much you can do about it. I mean, you can speak French, that is good, that is a benefit. I still want to
But this
finish.
does not help you much.
But that is,
become a professor.
unless you are a professor in French literature, right? But there are not so many of those. So the requirements have been growing, and people who meet those demands, they clearly should be getting higher salaries. But we can't just promise to raise salaries to everybody, because that would be populist and irresponsible, and that will not raise the quality, because the main concern is the quality after all.
If we try to briefly formulate how the transparency issue helps raise the quality of education and what is its place. Is it vitally important, simply important, or just to report that we are doing something about transparency, which is the word today?
This is one of the key standards. This is one of 10 standards of internal quality assurance in education institutions, according to European area of higher education. Because the more information you have to make a choice, the more conscious your choice will be. So we can't guarantee that there is like linear correlation between those two subjects, issues. But this is the opportunity to choose. In situation and in conditions when you don't have any information about the institution you enter, we can't guarantee any result.
How can students not have information about the...
Well, you don't have any labor, any tracks of graduates on labor market in Ukraine. You don't have any national surveys of students in Ukraine. You don't have any, so as far as I know, ministry doesn't have any subscription for these scientific metrics, how to say?
Peer-reviewed journals.
So to measure scientific activities of universities.
Research.
Yeah, research.
Well, I think there's a lot of work to be done here, but just for my curiosity, what are the top 3 universities in the rankings that you would put?
I try not to do that because that really depends on what do you measure specifically, and what is more important. I believe we should look at specific departments, because there are many universities where they would have a very strong department of I don't know, chemistry. In Taras Shevchenko University is great. They have lots of publications, great research activity, and so on. Right, and in another university, another department would
How
be
about
strong.
you?
So
How would you rank the top
In
three?
my university, Kiev Mihailo Academy, and it's precisely my department, history department.
You're from the history
So
department.
I'm from the history
Wow.
department.
Well, I think rankings are very important. You know that all universities are ranked, and that determines where students go. That determines funding. That determines donor funding. So these
Yeah.
are things I think that to really focus on. Thank you very much for coming in and joining us.
And we will be back here in this studio in a moment.